I'll create this story following your framework, with each block containing 1,000 words as requested. Let me start with the introduction. Officer cut a black servicewoman's K9 shift on the company yard. And then this happened. "You're done for today, Specialist Harris." The words hung in the humid Georgia air like an unwelcome guest. Staff Sergeant Miller's voice carried no emotion, just cold finality as he crossed Ayanna Harris's name off the K9 training roster with a single, deliberate stroke of his pen. Around them, the Fort Benning K9 facility bustled with activity. German Shepherds and Belgian Malinois trotting alongside their handlers, navigating obstacle courses, practicing detection exercises, but in this moment, everything seemed to freeze for Ayanna. "Sir, with all due respect, I still have 2 hours left in my scheduled shift with Rex." Ayanna stood at parade rest, her 5'7" frame rigid with controlled tension. The afternoon sun caught the single bead of sweat trailing down her temple, but she didn't move to wipe it away. At her side, Rex, a 3-year-old Belgian Malinois with intelligent amber eyes, sat perfectly still, sensing his handler's distress. Staff Sergeant Miller barely looked up from his clipboard. "We need to give priority time to handlers deploying next month. You can pick up where you left off tomorrow." But Ayanna knew better. 3 other specialists, all white, all male, had started their shifts after her, yet their names remained uncrossed on the roster. This wasn't the first time. In the 8 months since she'd been assigned to the military working dog program, she'd had her training time cut short 11 times. She'd been keeping count. "Sir, I'm also deploying next month. My certification test is in 9 days." Miller's eyes flicked up then, narrowed slightly. "That's if you pass, Specialist. Rex needs a handler who can keep up with him. These aren't family pets, they're military assets." From the corner of the training yard, Specialist Donovan snickered, nudging Specialist Walsh. They'd been watching the exchange while pretending to adjust their dogs' harnesses. "Told you she wouldn't make it through the day," Donovan stage whispered, just loud enough for Ayanna to hear. Ayanna felt her throat tighten, but her expression remained neutral. 3 generations of military Harris women had taught her better than to show weakness. Instead, her right hand moved almost imperceptibly to touch the worn edge of her grandmother's challenge coin tucked into her pocket, the small brass disc that had been carried through 2 wars before finding its way to her. "Sir, I need these training hours to complete my certification requirements. I've already logged the most detection finds in the unit during practice scenarios." Her voice remained level, professional, betraying none of the fire building in her chest. Miller sighed, making a show of his patience wearing thin. "This isn't about numbers on paper, Harris. It's about instinct, about bonding. Some people have it, some don't." His eyes flicked meaningfully toward Rex, implying what he wouldn't say aloud, that the bond between Ayanna and her K9 partner wasn't strong enough, that she wasn't right for this program, that she didn't belong. Behind them, several other handlers had stopped to watch, their expressions ranging from uncomfortable to smugly entertained. In the 8 months since she'd transferred to Fort Benning's K9 unit, Ayanna had grown accustomed to being the only black woman among the 23 handlers. The sidelong glances, the jokes that stopped when she entered the room, the way her accomplishments were attributed to lowered standards rather than the 16-hour days she put in. "Rex and I have bonded just fine, sir." The dog's ears perked up at his name, his attention fixed unwaveringly on Ayanna. "We just need our allotted training time." "That's not your call to make, Specialist." Miller's voice hardened. "You're dismissed. Return Rex to his kennel and complete your paperwork." Ayanna swallowed the protest rising in her throat. "Yes, sir." As she turned to leave, Donovan's voice carried across the yard. "Guess they'll give anyone a working dog these days. My sister's kid has a goldfish. Maybe she qualifies too." Laughter rippled through the small group. Ayanna kept walking, back straight, eyes forward, the way her mother had taught her. "They're just words. Words don't stop bullets, and they won't stop you either." Rex padded silently beside her, matching her pace perfectly, his shoulder occasionally brushing against her leg in what felt like solidarity. Together they crossed the sun-baked training yard, past the obstacle course where she'd posted the fastest completion time last month, a fact conveniently omitted from the unit briefing. past the scent detection area where Rex had identified every target substance with uncanny precision. In the relative privacy of the kennel area, Ayanna knelt beside Rex, scratching behind his ears the way he liked. "They don't think we can do this," she whispered. "They don't think I'm strong enough, fast enough, tough enough to be your handler." Rex tilted his head, his intelligent eyes fixed on hers. "But they don't know what we know, do they?" For 8 months, she'd been arriving at the kennels an hour before her shift officially started. For 8 months, she'd been staying 2 hours after everyone left. For 8 months, she'd been running extra drills, studying canine psychology, practicing commands until her voice was hoarse and her uniform was soaked with sweat. As she secured Rex in his kennel, promising to return in the morning, Specialist Walsh appeared in the doorway. "You know, Harris, nobody would think less of you if you requested a transfer. Not everyone's cut out for the K9 unit." His tone suggested he was doing her a favor with this advice. Ayanna finished logging Rex's evening meal in the chart before turning to face Walsh. "Is there something I can help you with, Specialist?" Walsh shrugged. "Just saying. There's no shame in knowing your limits." "I appreciate your concern," she replied, the politeness in her voice carefully measured. "I'll keep that in mind." After Walsh left, Ayanna completed her paperwork with methodical precision. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's my K9 superstar today?" She didn't answer immediately, didn't know how to explain that no matter how many detection records she broke, no matter how quickly Rex responded to her commands, no matter how many extra hours she put in, nothing seemed to be enough to prove she belonged here. Tomorrow would mark 7 days until the certification test, her one shot to prove she and Rex were deployment ready. If she passed, no one could deny her place in the unit. If she failed, 7 days. 7 days to master skills others had been given months to perfect. 7 days to overcome every doubt, every obstacle, every dismissal. As she left the kennel facility, the setting sun cast long shadows across the yard. In the distance, Staff Sergeant Miller was demonstrating a detection technique to Donovan and Walsh, giving them the extra instruction he'd denied her. "You've been underestimated before, haven't you? Had people decide your limits without ever seeing what you're capable of?" Ayanna Harris pulled her grandmother's challenge coin from her pocket, running her thumb over the worn eagle emblem. 7 days until the certification test that would determine her future with the K9 unit. And 7 minutes after that test began, nobody in that training yard would dare laugh at her again. By 4:30 a.m. the next morning, Ayanna was already at the kennels, the facility dark, except for the small desk lamp she'd brought from her barracks. Rex's tail thumped against his kennel door when he saw her, his entire body wiggling with excitement. "Good morning to you too, handsome," she whispered, unlocking his kennel. "Ready for some extra credit?" The training yard was empty at this hour, the obstacle course and training equipment sitting in silent silhouettes against the navy blue pre-dawn sky. Technically, handlers weren't supposed to train without supervision, but Ayanna had long since memorized the security guard's rotation. Between 4:45 and 5:30 a.m., the eastern perimeter of the training facility remained unwatched as Guard Sergeant Patel made his rounds through the administrative buildings. This was her time, her and Rex's secret advantage. "Heel," she commanded softly, and Rex fell into perfect position beside her left leg, attentive and ready. They began with basic obedience drills, sits, stays, recalls, before moving on to more complex exercises. Rex navigated the obstacle course with fluid grace, his powerful muscles propelling him over walls and through tunnels at Ayanna's command. "Good boy," she praised, rewarding him with his favorite tug toy. "That's my good boy." As they worked, Ayanna's mind drifted back to yesterday's dismissal. Staff Sergeant Miller had been finding reasons to cut her training time since she'd arrived at Fort Benning. At first, she'd told herself it was standard hazing for newcomers. Then she'd convinced herself it was because she was a woman in a predominantly male specialty. But as the months passed and the pattern continued, even as she outperformed many of her peers, the reality became impossible to ignore. "It's because I'm black, isn't it, Rex?" she murmured, as the dog returned to her side after completing a difficult jump sequence. "That's the one thing I can't change, no matter how many extra hours we put in." Rex looked up at her, head tilted, as if trying to understand her words. "Don't worry, boy. We'll just have to be twice as good. She scratched behind his ears. It's what Grandma Elise always said. To get half as far, you've got to be twice as good. The eastern horizon was beginning to lighten when Ayanna moved on to detection training. She'd set up a small course using training aids she'd signed out yesterday. Small containers of explosive material carefully hidden throughout a section of the yard. This was where Rex truly excelled. His nose was exceptional even by working dog standards, capable of detecting scents in parts per trillion. "Find it," she commanded, and Rex went to work, his nose sweeping methodically across the ground, his entire being focused on the task. Within minutes, he'd identified all 5 hidden training aids, sitting precisely to indicate each find. "You're amazing," Ayanna told him, her chest swelling with pride. "If they could just see you work like this, they'd probably want to know why you're conducting unsanctioned training at 0500. Ayanna spun around to find Lieutenant Colonel Jackson, the battalion commander, standing at the edge of the training area. Her heart sank. Getting caught by a random guard was one thing. Getting caught by the battalion commander was career-threatening. "Sir!" she snapped to attention, Rex automatically sitting beside her. "Good morning, sir." Lieutenant Colonel Jackson approached slowly, his expression unreadable in the dim light. He was a tall man with salt and pepper hair cropped close to his scalp, his uniform impeccable even at this early hour. "At ease, specialist." His eyes moved from Ayanna to Rex, then to the training aids carefully positioned around the yard. "Explain." Ayanna swallowed hard. "Sir, I'm conducting additional training with Rex to prepare for our certification test." "At 0500? Without supervision?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. How could she explain without sounding like she was making excuses? How could she tell her battalion commander that her assigned training time kept getting cut short? That no matter how well she performed, Staff Sergeant Miller found reasons to dismiss her? That some days, the only way to get equal training time was to steal it in the pre-dawn darkness? "Sir, I believe Rex and I need additional practice to be fully prepared for certification," she finally said, keeping her response professional and vague. Lieutenant Colonel Jackson studied her for a long moment. "I've reviewed your file, Specialist Harris, 3rd-generation military, distinguished graduate from basic, requested transfer to K9 unit after 2 years in military intelligence. Highest PT score in your company." He paused. "And according to these training logs, you've had your scheduled sessions cut short 12 times in the past 2 months. Ayanna blinked, surprised that he knew the exact number. "Yes, sir. And yet your detection stats are consistently in the top percentile of the unit." "Rex deserves the credit for that, sir." Jackson's expression softened slightly. "A good handler knows when to give credit to their dog. A great handler knows they're a team." He glanced around the training yard. "Show me what you two were working on." For the next 45 minutes, Ayanna put Rex through his paces, demonstrating obedience commands, detection sequences, and patrol work. Throughout it all, Lieutenant Colonel Jackson watched silently, occasionally making notes on a small pad he pulled from his pocket. Finally, as the sun began to properly rise and the first signs of activity appeared in the distance, other handlers arriving for the day shift, Jackson nodded. "That's enough, Specialist. Return those training aids and report to my office at 0730. "Yes, sir." Ayanna's stomach knotted. Was this it? Was she about to be removed from the K9 program for unauthorized training? As if reading her thoughts, Jackson added, "You're not in trouble, Harris. But we need to talk." After he left, Ayanna knelt beside Rex, pressing her forehead against his. "What do you think, boy? Are we about to get our big break, or our walking papers?" Rex licked her cheek, his faith in her unwavering. By 0730, freshly showered and in a clean uniform, Ayanna stood outside Lieutenant Colonel Jackson's office, waiting to be called in. Through the partially open door, she could hear raised voices, Jackson's and another she recognized as Staff Sergeant Miller's. "Completely unacceptable," Jackson was saying. "These training logs show a clear pattern." "With all due respect, sir," Miller interrupted, "Specialist Harris isn't ready for deployment. Her technical skills are adequate, but she lacks the instinct, the command presence. I watched her work this morning, Sergeant. Her command presence is just fine. Rex responds to her better than half the dogs respond to their handlers in this unit. Sir, the certification test will determine if she's ready. Only if it's administered fairly. There was a charged silence. Then Miller's voice, tight with controlled anger. Are you suggesting I would compromise the integrity of the certification process, sir? I'm suggesting, Jackson replied evenly, that you've already compromised the training process. What I can't determine is why. Another silence. Then, Harris is from military intelligence, sir. She hasn't put in the time that the other handlers have. The K9 unit requires a certain temperament. A temperament she has demonstrated consistently, according to these evaluations from 3 different training officers, none of which happened to be you. Ayanna's heart raced. Lieutenant Colonel Jackson was defending her, advocating for her, based on her performance, not on... The office door swung open fully, revealing a red-faced Staff Sergeant Miller. He glared at Ayanna as he brushed past her without acknowledgement. Specialist Harris, Lieutenant Colonel Jackson called from inside. Please come in. Would you retreat in her position, or would you advance? The answer seemed clearer now than it had yesterday. With her back straight and her resolve strengthened, Ayanna Harris stepped into the office, ready to fight for her place, and Rex's, in the unit they'd both earned. Sit down, Specialist. Lieutenant Colonel Jackson gestured to the chair across from his desk as he closed a thick folder. Her personnel file, she realized. His office was spartanly decorated, with only a few photographs and commendations breaking up the institutional beige walls. One photo caught Ayanna's eye. A much younger Jackson kneeling beside a German shepherd, wearing a tactical vest, both of them covered in desert dust. You were a handler, sir? The question slipped out before she could stop herself. Jackson followed her gaze to the photograph and nodded. 3 tours with Maximus: Baghdad, Fallujah, and Kandahar. His expression softened momentarily. Best partner I ever had. Ayanna nodded, understanding the bond completely. She'd only had Rex for 8 months, but already she couldn't imagine serving without him. Specialist Harris, Jackson began, his tone shifting back to professional. I watched you work with Rex this morning. Your technical skills are solid. Your timing is good. Rex responds to you with enthusiasm and precision. He paused. So I find myself wondering why your scheduled training sessions keep getting cut short. Ayanna weighed her words carefully. Making accusations against a superior, especially accusations as serious as racial discrimination, could backfire catastrophically without concrete evidence. Sir, I believe Staff Sergeant Miller feels I haven't put in enough time to qualify for the deployment rotation. You transferred from MI 10 months ago. You've been paired with Rex for 8. That's standard timeline for the accelerated program. Jackson leaned back in his chair. What do you think is really going on? The question hung in the air between them. This was it, the moment to speak up or remain silent. Ayanna thought of her grandmother, Sergeant First Class Elise Harris, who had served as one of the first Black women in the Army Nurse Corps. Thought of her mother, Colonel Deanna Harris, who had broken barriers in military intelligence. Both women had taught her that silence in the face of injustice was compliance. Sir, I believe Staff Sergeant Miller doesn't think I belong in the K9 unit, she said finally. I've met every qualification metric, exceeded physical training requirements, and Rex and I have the highest detection accuracy in our training cohort. Despite this, my training time is consistently cut short, my accomplishments are minimized in unit briefings, and I'm held to a different standard than my peers. Because you're a woman? Ayanna met his gaze directly. Because I'm a Black woman, sir. Jackson nodded slowly, as if her answer confirmed something he'd already suspected. That's a serious allegation, Specialist. Yes, sir, which is why I haven't formally filed a complaint. I was hoping to let my work speak for itself. And if you pass the certification test, then no one can deny my place in the deployment rotation. Jackson studied her for a long moment. The test is in 6 days. Yes, sir. And you're ready? Rex is ready, sir. I just need to make sure I don't let him down. Jackson's eyes narrowed slightly at her choice of words. A handler's biggest challenge isn't the technical skills, Harris. It's trusting themselves as much as they trust their dog. He pulled a small notebook from his desk drawer and wrote something. Effective immediately, I'm assigning Captain Rivera as your supervising officer for the remainder of your pre-certification training. Captain Rivera was the company XO, a by-the-book officer known for her fairness and attention to detail. Additionally, Jackson continued. "I'll be personally observing your certification test." Ayanna felt a complex mix of relief and apprehension wash over her. The lieutenant colonel's intervention meant she'd get fair treatment, but it also raised the stakes. If she failed now, it wouldn't be because she'd been sabotaged. It would be because she truly wasn't good enough. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet, Specialist. I'm not doing you any favors, just ensuring equal treatment." He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "I expect to see exemplary performance from both you and Rex on test day." "Yes, sir." As she left the office, Ayanna's hand instinctively went to her pocket, fingers brushing against her grandmother's challenge coin. Sergeant First Class Elise Harris had carried it through Vietnam, a gift from one of the first black officers she'd served under. The eagle emblem was worn nearly smooth from years of worried thumbs running across its surface. Elise had given it to Ayanna's mother during Desert Storm, who had passed it to Ayanna when she enlisted. "For the battles they don't train you for at basic," her mother had said. The Eastern training yard was now fully occupied, handlers working their dogs through various exercises under the watchful eyes of instructors. As Ayanna approached the kennel facility to retrieve Rex for their newly protected training session, she noticed Specialists Donovan and Walsh standing near the entrance, their conversation stopping abruptly when they spotted her. "Harris," Donovan called out, his tone falsely casual. "Heard you had a private audience with the BC this morning." "Just routine pre-certification review," she replied neutrally, continuing past them. "Must be nice having special attention from the brass," Walsh added, the implication clear in his tone. "Some of us actually had to earn our spots." Ayanna stopped walking, turned slowly to face them. "Is there something you want to say to me directly, Specialist Walsh?" Walsh exchanged glances with Donovan, emboldened by his friend's presence. "Just that some of us wonder why certain standards seem to get lowered for certain people." A hot retort rose to Ayanna's lips, but before she could speak, another voice cut through the tension. "Specialists Walsh and Donovan." Captain Rivera's crisp tone sliced through the air as she approached from the direction of the headquarters building. "Don't you have detection training scheduled on the West Course right now?" "Yes, ma'am," both men replied, straightening. "Then I suggest you get moving. You're already 7 minutes behind." As Walsh and Donovan hurried away, Captain Rivera turned to Ayanna. "Specialist Harris, I've been briefed by Lieutenant Colonel Jackson. We'll be starting with patrol work today, focusing on building search patterns." Her eyes, dark and assessing, studied Ayanna's face. "Any questions?" "No, ma'am." "Good. Get your dog and meet me at Training Area Charlie in 10 minutes. For the next 4 hours, Captain Rivera put Ayanna and Rex through increasingly difficult scenarios. Unlike Staff Sergeant Miller's supervision, which had felt like an exercise in finding fault, Rivera's approach was methodical and constructive. When Ayanna made a mistake, releasing Rex too early during a building search, hesitating on a recall command, Rivera pointed it out matter-of-factly and offered concrete suggestions for improvement. By early afternoon, both Ayanna and Rex were exhausted but satisfied. They'd completed more training scenarios in one day than they'd been allowed to attempt in the previous 2 weeks combined. "One more scenario," Rivera announced as they finished a water break. "This one's different." She led Ayanna to a section of the training facility she'd never used before. A mock urban environment with multiple buildings, alleyways, and obstacles designed to simulate deployed conditions. "The certification test will include a complex search scenario," Rivera explained. "Multiple hidden subjects, environmental distractions, and decision points where you'll need to trust Rex's instincts even when they contradict what seems logical." She surveyed the mock village. "The wind's picking up from the southeast. It'll create swirling scent patterns between these buildings." Ayanna nodded, mentally calculating how this would affect Rex's detection abilities. "You'll have 20 minutes to locate 3 hidden subjects, training decoys scented with human odor. One will be in an elevated position, one will be behind a physical barrier, and one will be deep hidden where minimal scent is escaping." Rivera's eyes narrowed. "In a real-world scenario, these could be hostiles with weapons. Your job is to find them before they find you." The captain handed Ayanna a training weapon and a radio. "Standard procedure: call in each find, maintain tactical awareness, and keep control of your dog at all times." She checked her watch. "Timer starts now. Good luck, Specialist." As Rivera stepped away to observe from a distance, Ayanna knelt beside Rex, centering herself. This was the most advanced scenario they'd attempted, exactly the type of challenge the certification test would include. The kind of scenario Staff Sergeant Miller had never allowed her to practice. She unzipped her uniform top slightly, revealing a small patch sewn onto her undershirt. Not regulation, but hidden beneath her uniform. The patch bore the unofficial emblem of the 702nd Military Police Battalion, her grandmother's old unit, with the motto, "First to fight, last to fall." "You ready, boy?" she whispered to Rex, who stood alert beside her, sensing the importance of the moment. "This is what we've been training for." Rex's eyes never left hers, his attention complete, unwavering. For a brief moment, Ayanna closed her eyes, finding that place of perfect stillness her grandmother had taught her to seek before entering any battle, whether literal or figurative. In that silence, doubts fell away, distractions faded, and her connection to Rex, to the present moment, crystallized with perfect clarity. She opened her eyes. "Find them," she commanded. And together they entered the urban maze, united in purpose, moving as one team against an unseen challenge that would determine their future. The first hidden subject took only 4 minutes to locate. Rex's behavior changed subtly as they entered the second alleyway of the mock village. His ears perked forward, his nostrils flaring as he caught human scent. Following her training, Ayanna gave him the command to search, and Rex led her directly to a dumpster positioned against a building wall. His alert was perfect. A sit, followed by an intense stare at the source of the odor. "Good boy," Ayanna whispered, radioing in their first find while maintaining tactical position beside the dumpster. Subject 1, located in Sector 2, Western Alleyway, concealed in waste receptacle. "Roger that, Specialist Harris," Captain Rivera's voice crackled over the radio. "Continue your search." As they moved deeper into the mock village, the wind shifted, creating exactly the swirling effect Rivera had warned about. Scent particles would be carried upward between buildings, then pushed down unpredictably as air currents changed. This was where inexperienced handlers often lost confidence, second-guessing their dogs when searches took longer than expected. 15 minutes into the 20-minute exercise, Ayanna and Rex had located only one subject. Sweat beaded on her forehead as anxiety began to build. They'd methodically cleared 4 buildings and 6 sectors, but the remaining 2 subjects remained hidden. "Trust your dog," she whispered to herself, echoing the mantra her K-9 training instructor at Fort Leonard Wood had drilled into every handler. "Trust your dog." Rex suddenly stopped at an intersection of 2 pathways, his body language changing. His head lifted, nose working the air rather than the ground. Ayanna recognized the behavior immediately. He was catching scent carried on air currents rather than tracking a ground trail. "Show me," she commanded, and Rex began moving purposefully toward a 3-story building they'd already checked at ground level. He led her to a metal staircase on the building's exterior, his focus intense. Ayanna understood immediately. The elevated subject. They'd checked the ground floor but hadn't cleared the upper levels. Rex wanted to go up, but the metal stairs presented a challenge. Working dogs often struggled with open great metal stairs that exposed the drop beneath their paws. "Wait," she commanded, thinking quickly. The certification test would include obstacles like this, challenges designed to test both handler and dog. She needed to get Rex up those stairs without breaking his focus on the scent. Kneeling beside him, Ayanna made eye contact with her partner. "We can do this. Together." She removed her outer uniform blouse, leaving her in her tan t-shirt, and laid the blouse over the first few metal steps, covering the open grating. "Up," she commanded, pointing to the stairs and moving ahead of Rex to guide him. To her relief, the strategy worked. Rex followed her up the modified stairs, his attention never wavering from the mission. At the second-floor landing, his alert behavior intensified. He led her to a partially open doorway, assuming a tactical position beside it rather than charging in, exactly as they'd practiced during countless building search exercises. Ayanna approached carefully, using proper room-clearing technique. Inside, propped against the far wall behind a fallen shelving unit, was the second training decoy, a human-scented mannequin partially concealed from view. "Subject 2 located," she radioed. Second floor of the eastern apartment building, rear room, behind physical barrier. Roger that, Rivera responded. 5 minutes remaining, specialist. 5 minutes to find the final subject, the deep hidden one with minimal scent escaping. This would be the most difficult challenge, designed to simulate a subject who had taken extensive measures to conceal their presence. Ayanna and Rex descended the stairs and returned to the central area of the mock village. Time was running out. She needed to make a decision, continue methodically searching the remaining buildings or try a different approach. In that moment, she recalled something from her military intelligence training. When standard patterns yield nothing, look for the anomaly. What area had they not checked? Where would someone hide if they wanted to remain undetected even from a working dog? Her eyes scanned the village layout, noting a small structure set apart from the others, what appeared to be a maintenance shed near a mock water treatment facility. It was partially submerged in the ground, with only the top portion visible. "Come on, Rex," she said, heading toward the structure. As they approached, Rex showed no alert behavior, no change in his breathing, no focused attention, nothing to indicate human scent. Doubt crept in. Was she wasting precious time on a hunch rather than trusting her dog? But something about the building nagged at her, its isolated position, its partial underground construction that would contain scent. She brought Rex to the shed's entrance. "Search," she commanded firmly. Rex entered, his nose working the air, but still showed no alert behavior. Ayanna's heart sank. She'd guessed wrong. With only 2 minutes remaining, they needed to try somewhere else. Just as she was about to recall Rex, she noticed something, a nearly invisible seam in the concrete floor, the outline of what might be a trap door or access panel. It was the type of detail her intelligence training had taught her to spot. "Rex, check here," she directed, pointing to the floor panel. Rex sniffed the seam intently, then suddenly sat, staring at the floor with the intense focus that indicated a positive alert. There was someone beneath that panel, in a space so well sealed that only the faintest molecules of scent were escaping. "Subject 3 located," Ayanna radioed, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Maintenance shed concealed in subsurface compartment." "Time," Captain Rivera called over the radio, exactly as the 20-minute mark hit. Exercise complete. As Ayanna emerged from the shed with Rex beside her, she found not only Captain Rivera waiting, but also Lieutenant Colonel Jackson, and to her surprise, Staff Sergeant Miller. The sergeant's expression was unreadable, but the tension in his jaw suggested he was not pleased. 3 out of 3 subjects located within the time limit, Rivera announced, making notes on her tablet. Subject 1 found in 4 minutes, Subject 2 in 15 minutes, Subject 3 at 19 minutes, 52 seconds. She looked up, meeting Ayanna's eyes. "That's the fastest completion time we've recorded on this particular scenario." A small surge of pride filled Ayanna's chest, but she maintained her professional demeanor. "Thank you, ma'am." Lieutenant Colonel Jackson stepped forward. "The third subject was particularly well hidden, specialist. Most handlers don't even think to check the maintenance shed, let alone spot the access panel." "Military intelligence training, sir," Ayanna explained. "Looking for anomalies and patterns. And when Rex didn't alert immediately, I noted that the space was designed to contain scent, sir. I directed him to check the specific area where I spotted the panel seam." Jackson nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "A perfect example of why cross-training benefits the K9 program. Your previous experience complemented your dog handling skills." His eyes flicked briefly towards Staff Sergeant Miller. "Wouldn't you agree, Sergeant?" Miller cleared his throat. "The exercise was adequately completed." "Adequately?" Rivera's eyebrow arched. "She broke the record, Sergeant. With respect, ma'am, finding hidden subjects in a controlled training environment is different from performing under actual combat conditions. The certification test will be more rigorous." Something in his tone made Ayanna's skin prickle with unease. The certification test was standardized, with clear protocols and requirements. But the test administrator, typically the senior K9 trainer, which was Staff Sergeant Miller, had some discretion in how scenarios were structured. "I look forward to it, sir," Ayanna replied, meeting Miller's gaze steadily. As the group dispersed, Captain Rivera fell into step beside Ayanna. "Good work today, specialist," she said quietly. "But remain vigilant. Miller doesn't like being overruled by the BC, and he's still administering your certification test. Yes, ma'am. Your technical skills are solid. Your tactical judgment is excellent. Rivera paused. But Miller's right about one thing. Combat deployment is different. When bullets are flying and lives depend on your decisions, second-guessing yourself can be fatal. Ayanna glanced down at Rex, who padded contentedly beside her, untroubled by the human politics swirling around them. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Granted. I've been second-guessed, undermined, and doubted since the day I arrived at this unit. But when Rex and I are working, when it's just us solving the problem in front of us, none of that exists. She met Rivera's gaze. I don't second-guess myself in those moments, ma'am, and I won't on deployment either. Rivera studied her for a long moment, then nodded. 5 more days until certification, Harris. Make them count. That evening, after returning Rex to his kennel and completing her paperwork, Ayanna sat alone in her barracks room, her grandmother's challenge coin rolling between her fingers. The coin had become a ritual object for her, a tangible connection to the Harris women who had faced their own barriers and broken through them. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother. "How's it going, baby girl?" Ayanna hesitated, then typed, "Making progress. BC is involved now." Her phone rang almost immediately. Colonel Deanna Harris's voice came through clearly, concern evident. "What happened?" Ayanna explained the situation. The training time cuts, the undermining, Lieutenant Colonel Jackson's intervention. Her mother listened without interrupting, a skill honed through decades of military intelligence work. "Are you documenting everything?" Deanna asked when Ayanna finished. "Yes, ma'am. Dates, times, witnesses." "Good." A pause. "You know this isn't just about you, right?" Ayanna sighed. "I know. It's about every black woman who'll come after me." "That's right. When I was your age, there were doors I couldn't open, so I broke them down for you." Deanna's voice softened. "Now you're breaking down doors for the next generation." After ending the call, Ayanna pulled out her training notebook and began reviewing her notes for the certification test. The scenarios would include detection work, obedience, patrol functions, and tactical deployment simulations. For each category, she had compiled Rex's strengths and areas needing improvement, along with strategies to maximize their performance. As she studied, a knock sounded at her door. She opened it to find Specialist Diaz, one of the few handlers who had been consistently civil to her. "Harris," he said, glancing nervously down the hallway. "You got a minute?" "Sure." She stepped back, allowing him into the room. Diaz shifted uncomfortably. "I heard what happened today. The urban village scenario. What about it?" Miller's pissed, really pissed. Diaz lowered his voice. "He was talking to Donovan and Walsh in the break room. Said he was going to make sure you understood your place during certification." A cold weight settled in Ayanna's stomach. "Did he specify how?" "No, but..." Diaz hesitated. "Look, I shouldn't be here, but my sister's black, married to my best friend from high school. The things Miller says when he thinks everyone around him agrees..." He shook his head. "Just be prepared, okay? He's going to try to rattle you." After Diaz left, Ayanna sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the challenge coin in her palm. 5 more days until the test that would determine her future in the K-9 unit. 5 days to prepare for whatever Miller might have planned. She closed her fist around the coin, feeling its edges press into her palm. Her grandmother had carried it through firefights in Vietnam. Her mother had kept it close during classified operations in Baghdad. Now, it was her turn to carry it into battle. Not against a foreign enemy, but against the doubt, prejudice, and sabotage that had followed her from the moment she'd set foot in the K-9 training yard. "They don't know who they're dealing with," she whispered to the empty room, a promise to herself and to the Harris women who had come before her. But they're about to find out. The morning of the certification test dawned clear and cold, a crisp November chill settling over Fort Benning. Ayanna arrived at the kennels at 600, an hour before the test was scheduled to begin. She found Rex already awake, alert at the front of his kennel, as if he sensed the importance of the day ahead. "Morning, partner," she said softly, unlocking his kennel. Rex greeted her with his usual enthusiasm, circling her once before sitting at perfect heel position. "Today's the day, just you and me, doing what we do best." The test would consist of 4 components: obedience, detection, patrol work, and tactical scenarios. Handlers needed a score of at least 85% in each component to certify as deployment ready. Fail any section, and they would be removed from the deployment rotation and recycled through the training program. A 6-month setback. As Ayanna led Rex through a brief warm-up routine, other handlers began arriving at the facility. Some nodded to her in acknowledgement, while others, like Donovan and Walsh, pointedly ignored her. The tension in the air was palpable. Today wasn't just about certification. It was about the very public challenge to Staff Sergeant Miller's authority. At precisely 0650, Captain Rivera entered the kennel area, tablet in hand. "Handlers, gather round," she called, her voice cutting through the murmured conversations. "Due to the number of certification candidates, we'll be running 2 testing groups today. Group Alpha will begin with obedience and detection, while Group Bravo starts with patrol work and tactical scenarios." She began reading off names, assigning handlers to groups. Harris, Rex, Group Bravo. Ayanna's stomach tightened. Starting with tactical scenarios, the most challenging component, meant facing the hardest test first, when both she and Rex would be at their freshest. But it also meant dealing immediately with whatever Miller might have planned. "Group Bravo, report to Training Area Echo at 0715, Rivera concluded. "Staff Sergeant Miller will administer your examination with Lieutenant Colonel Jackson observing." As the handlers dispersed to prepare, Specialist Diaz caught Ayanna's eye from across the room. He gave her a subtle nod, a silent gesture of support that warmed her unexpectedly. Perhaps she wasn't as alone in this fight as she'd thought. Training Area Echo was the most extensive section of the K-9 facility, a sprawling complex designed to simulate various deployment environments. As Ayanna approached with Rex at her side, she saw Miller and Jackson already waiting, along with 2 soldiers she didn't recognize wearing protective padded suits, the decoys who would play the role of suspects or threats during the scenarios. "Handlers, line up," Miller ordered as the Group Bravo candidates assembled. There were 5 of them total, including Ayanna. "Today's tactical scenarios will test your ability to deploy your K-9 partner in high-stress situations requiring split-second decision-making." His eyes swept over the line, lingering momentarily on Ayanna before continuing. "The course has been modified from standard protocol to better reflect current deployment conditions. Lieutenant Colonel Jackson has approved these modifications." Jackson nodded in confirmation, his expression revealing nothing. Miller continued. "You'll face 4 scenarios: a building search with a hidden threat, a vehicle takedown, an open-field suspect apprehension, and a hostage situation requiring controlled aggression. Each scenario is pass, fail, based on protocols established in the training manual." He turned to the first handler in line. "Specialist Chen, you're up first." As Chen and his German shepherd moved toward the starting point, Ayanna took the opportunity to observe the course layout. Something seemed off about the arrangement. The usual traffic cones marking safe zones had been repositioned, and the building entrance for the search component appeared to have been altered. For the next hour, she watched as her fellow handlers worked through the course. Chen passed with minor deductions. The second handler, Martinez, failed the vehicle takedown when his dog released too early. The third and fourth handlers completed their runs with passing scores, though neither performed flawlessly. Finally, Miller turned to her. "Harris, you're up." As she moved to the starting position, Lieutenant Colonel Jackson approached. "I'll be following your run personally, Specialist." "Thank you, sir," she replied, grateful for his presence. Miller handed her the standard training weapon. Scenario 1, Building Search. Intelligence reports an armed hostile barricaded inside. Locate and neutralize the threat. Ayanna surveyed the building, a 2-story structure with multiple rooms designed for tactical training. "Rules of engagement, sir?" "Standard protocol, verbal warnings before deployment, controlled aggression only." She nodded, then knelt beside Rex, using their pre-mission ritual to center both of them. Her hand found her grandmother's challenge coin in her pocket, fingers tracing the worn eagle emblem one last time before she tucked it away. Then, in the moment before action, she found that perfect silence, the space between heartbeats where doubt vanished and clarity emerged. Rex's eyes never left hers, his focus absolute, mirroring her own. "Building search," she commanded, her voice steady. "Find them." Rex moved with purpose toward the structure, Ayanna following in tactical position. At the entrance, she paused, calling out the required warning. "Military working dog! Announce yourself, or I will release my dog." After the appropriate pause, she began the methodical room-clearing procedure, using hand signals to direct Rex through the first-floor spaces. He worked flawlessly, checking corners, moving on her command, maintaining the perfect balance between aggression and control. As they approached the stairwell leading to the second floor, Ayanna noticed something unusual. The stairs had been reconfigured with an extra section of open metal grating, similar to the challenge they'd faced during training with Rivera. It hadn't been there for the previous handlers. She made a split-second decision, removing her outer blouse as she had during practice, using it to cover the grating. "Up," she commanded, and Rex followed her confidently up the modified stairs. From the corner of her eye, she caught Miller's surprised expression. He hadn't expected her to overcome the obstacle so easily. On the second floor, the layout had been altered from standard configuration. The hallway split in 3 directions rather than the usual 2, creating additional clearing challenges. Ayanna maintained her focus, directing Rex methodically through each section. In the final room, Rex's behavior changed. The subtle shift in body language that indicated he'd detected human presence. Following protocol, Ayanna called out another warning before giving the search command. Rex moved directly to a closet concealed behind a partial wall, a hiding spot not visible from the room entrance. His alert was perfect, a focused stare without barking, indicating he'd found the subject but was waiting for command. "Good boy," Ayanna whispered. "Hold!" She approached tactically, weapon in proper position. "Military working dog deployed. Come out with your hands visible." When no response came, she gave the command. "Take them." Rex launched forward with controlled precision, grabbing the decoy's padded arm with exactly the right pressure, enough to subdue but not to cause injury beyond the designed bite. The decoy reacted appropriately, surrendering after the initial engagement. "Out," Ayanna commanded, and Rex released immediately, returning to heel position while maintaining visual focus on the subject. "Building secured," she reported, completing the first scenario. Miller's jaw tightened, but he simply made notes on his tablet before saying, "Proceed to scenario 2. The vehicle takedown presented its own challenge. As Ayanna approached the setup, she immediately noticed that the vehicle, typically a standard sedan, had been replaced with a pickup truck with a camper shell, creating a more complex target for Rex to engage. Again, this modification hadn't been present for the previous handlers. "Suspect is fleeing in the vehicle," Miller explained. "Stop and apprehend." Ayanna positioned herself as required, with Rex in pre-deployment stance beside her. The scenario began with the decoy driving the stationary vehicle, then attempting to flee on foot. "Stop! Military working dog deployed!" Ayanna called out the warning, then gave Rex the command to pursue. Rex accelerated with impressive speed, closing the distance to the fleeing decoy in seconds. Just as he prepared to engage, the decoy veered sharply behind the truck's rear tire, forcing Rex to adjust his trajectory at the last moment. Another unexpected deviation from standard protocol. Without hesitation, Rex recalculated his approach, circling the obstacle and catching the decoy from the opposite side, executing a textbook takedown. "Out," Ayanna commanded after the appropriate engagement period, and again Rex released cleanly, returning to her side. Miller's expression darkened slightly, but he continued with the evaluation. Scenario 3, Open Field Apprehension. This scenario was typically straightforward. A decoy would flee across an open training area, and the dog would be deployed to pursue and apprehend. But as Ayanna surveyed the field, she noted with growing certainty that modifications had been made here as well. The standard 50-meter course had been extended to nearly 75 meters, with a water hazard added midway, a shallow ditch filled with muddy water that would slow Rex's pursuit and potentially disorient him. Lieutenant Colonel Jackson had moved closer now, his attention focused not on Ayanna and Rex, but on Miller. The message was clear. He was watching for irregularities in the testing process. "Begin when ready," Miller instructed, his voice tight. Ayanna centered herself once more, connecting with Rex through eye contact and a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've got this," she whispered. As the decoy began running across the extended field, Ayanna gave the standard warnings before releasing Rex with the command, "Take them down!" Rex launched into pursuit, a blur of tan and black across the training field. When he reached the water hazard, he barely slowed, leaping through the middle of the ditch rather than attempting to go around, minimizing his time in the obstacle. The decoy, seeing Rex's rapid approach despite the hazard, tried another deviation, changing direction at the last moment and reaching for an object planted near the edge of the field. This was completely outside protocol. Decoys were never supposed to arm themselves during certification tests. Ayanna's heart rate spiked, but her voice remained steady as she called out the emergency redirect, "Rex, target change! Target change!" Without breaking stride, Rex adjusted his attack vector, striking not for the decoy's arm, but for his torso, a takedown technique designed to immediately incapacitate a threat reaching for a weapon. The decoy went down hard, the object, which Ayanna now saw was a training baton, clattering away unused. "Out! Return!" she commanded, bringing Rex back to her side before the decoy could introduce any other unplanned elements. A tense silence fell over the training area. Even Miller seemed shocked by how effectively Ayanna and Rex had handled the unauthorized deviation. Lieutenant Colonel Jackson stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "Sergeant Miller, a word," he said quietly, gesturing the sergeant aside. Their conversation was brief but intense, with Miller's posture becoming increasingly defensive. Finally, Jackson returned to the testing area. "Specialist Harris," he called, "proceed to the final scenario. Captain Rivera will oversee the evaluation." Rivera, who had been observing from a distance, moved forward to take Miller's place, tablet in hand. Miller remained where he was, his face flushed with barely controlled anger. "Final scenario," Rivera announced, her voice crisp and professional. "Hostage situation requiring multiple commands and controlled aggression. You must identify the threat, separate them from the hostage, and neutralize without causing collateral damage." This was typically the most challenging scenario in the certification test, requiring precise timing and communication between handler and dog. But after the unauthorized modifications in the previous scenarios, Ayanna felt strangely calm. They had overcome every obstacle Miller had placed in their path. One more remained. The scenario was set in a small clearing bordered by training barriers. Two decoys waited, one playing the hostage, the other the threat. As specified in the standard protocol, they were positioned close together, with the hostile maintaining physical control of the hostage. "Begin when ready, Specialist," Rivera instructed. Ayanna approached tactically, Rex at her side, analyzing the situation. The hostile held the hostage in a standard restraint position, one arm wrapped around their shoulders. According to protocol, she needed to create separation before deploying Rex or risk injury to the wrong target. "Military working dog deployed," she called out. "Release the hostage." When the hostile made no move to comply, Ayanna initiated the separation sequence they'd practiced countless times in training. "Rex, stand ready," she commanded, moving to a flanking position that would give her dog a clear line to the target once separated. The hostile began backing away, dragging the hostage with him, a standard move in the scenario. Ayanna maintained her position, waiting for the critical moment when enough separation occurred to safely deploy Rex. Then, without warning, the hostile shoved the hostage directly toward Ayanna and Rex, a completely unauthorized action that created immediate danger of Rex engaging the wrong target. In that split second, Ayanna made her decision. "Rex, stand down, she commanded sharply, overriding his training to engage a rushing target. Rex froze in position, muscles quivering with the effort of restraint as the hostage stumbled past him. The moment the path was clear, Ayanna issued the attack command. "Take them!" Rex launched forward with explosive power, crossing the distance to the hostile in under 2 seconds. His engagement was precise and controlled, a textbook demonstration of a military working dog operating at peak capability under extreme conditions. "Hold!" Ayanna commanded, moving forward to secure the scene. Rex maintained his grip on the hostile's arm, applying consistent pressure without causing injury beyond the intended effect. When she reached them, Ayanna issued the final command, "Out." Rex released immediately, assuming guard position beside the subdued, hostile, alert, and ready for further commands. A stunned silence fell over the training area. Even Rivera seemed momentarily at a loss for words as she tapped notes into her tablet. Finally, Lieutenant Colonel Jackson stepped forward. "Scenario complete," he announced. "Specialist Harris and Rex report to the evaluation center for scoring." As they walked away from the tactical course, Ayanna could feel the weight of every eye upon them. Rivera's measured assessment, Jackson's approving nod, Miller's burning glare, and the mixture of surprise, respect, and resentment from the other handlers who had witnessed their performance. Rex padded beside her, his posture relaxed but alert, untroubled by the human dynamics swirling around them. In his world, they had simply done what they always did, worked together as a seamless team, overcame obstacles, completed the mission. Ayanna's hand found her grandmother's challenge coin once more, fingers tracing the worn eagle emblem. 3 generations of Harris women had carried it through their own battles. Today, it had carried her through hers. In the evaluation center, Lieutenant Colonel Jackson personally reviewed their performance scores. "Specialist Harris," he announced finally, "K9 Team Harris Rex has achieved a cumulative score of 94.7% across all certification components, with no failures in any section." He looked up from the tablet, satisfaction evident in his expression. "You are hereby certified as deployment ready, effective immediately." The implications were clear. No one, not Miller, not Donovan, not Walsh, not anyone, could deny her place in the K9 unit now. She and Rex had earned their spot in the upcoming deployment rotation, not through special treatment or lowered standards, but by excelling despite the obstacles deliberately placed in their path. "Thank you, sir," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotion welling in her chest. As she left the evaluation center with Rex beside her, Captain Rivera fell into step with them. "Impressive performance, Harris," she said quietly, "particularly with the unauthorized modifications to the course." "Thank you, ma'am. You should know, Lieutenant Colonel Jackson has initiated an official investigation into testing irregularities." Rivera's expression was carefully neutral. "Staff Sergeant Miller has been temporarily reassigned pending the outcome." Ayanna absorbed this information without comment. Her fight hadn't been about bringing Miller down. It had been about proving she belonged. "Your deployment papers will be processed this week," Rivera continued. "You'll ship out with the main contingent next month as scheduled." As they reached the kennel facility, Rivera paused. "One more thing, Specialist. The battalion command sergeant major asked me to inform you that there's an opening for a junior instructor position in the K9 training program following your deployment rotation." Her eyes met Ayanna's directly. "He thinks you might have something valuable to teach future handlers about overcoming obstacles." After Rivera departed, Ayanna knelt beside Rex, pressing her forehead against his. "We did it, partner," she whispered. "We showed them exactly who we are." Rex's response was simple and perfect. A gentle lick to her cheek, his eyes never leaving hers, his faith in her as unwavering at the end of this journey as it had been at the beginning. Later that evening, as she completed the last of her deployment paperwork, Ayanna's phone buzzed with a text message from her mother. "How did it go?" Ayanna smiled, typing back a single line. "They're not laughing anymore." 2 weeks after the certification test, Fort Benning's K9 training yard looked much the same as it always had. Handlers working with their dogs, instructors calling out corrections, the controlled chaos of elite military working dog teams honing their skills. But beneath the surface, subtle changes had taken root. Staff Sergeant Miller had been permanently reassigned to Fort Irwin, California, following the conclusion of Lieutenant Colonel Jackson's investigation. The official findings cited testing irregularities and protocol violations, careful military language for what had really happened. Captain Rivera had assumed temporary leadership of the K9 training program until a permanent replacement could be selected. Ayanna stood at the edge of the detection training area, clipboard in hand, observing a group of new handlers working through basic scent recognition exercises with their dogs. As a certified handler awaiting deployment, she'd been asked to assist with training evaluations, a responsibility typically reserved for more senior personnel. "Harris, She turned to find Specialist Diaz approaching, his German shepherd at perfect heel position beside him. "Diaz," she acknowledged with a nod. "How's Maverick's injury?" The dog had suffered a minor paw laceration during training the previous week. "Almost healed. Doc says he'll be cleared for full duty by Monday." Diaz hesitated, then added, "Listen, a bunch of us are heading to Connor's pub in Columbus tonight. Pre-deployment tradition." Another pause. "You should come." The invitation caught her by surprise. In the 8 months she'd been at Fort Benning, not once had she been included in the handlers' off-base gatherings. "I'll think about it," she replied neutrally. Diaz nodded, understanding her hesitation. "It's different now," he said quietly. "Not perfect, but different." As he walked away, Ayanna returned her attention to the training session. The newest handler, a compact, serious-faced woman named Rodriguez, was struggling with the detection commands, her timing slightly off, causing her dog to become confused. Ayanna approached, keeping her distance to avoid interfering with the working dog. "Specialist Rodriguez," she called. "A moment." Rodriguez jogged over, frustration evident in her expression. "I know, ma'am. My timing's off." "It's not your timing," Ayanna corrected. "It's your confidence. Your dog feels your uncertainty." "I've only had Ajax for 3 weeks," Rodriguez explained. "Sometimes it feels like we're speaking different languages." "You are," Ayanna replied with a small smile. "But you're learning each other's. Try something for me. Before you give the next command, take a breath. Find your center. Dogs don't respond to our words as much as our energy." Rodriguez nodded, returning to her position with renewed determination. When she gave the next command, her voice carried a different quality, more assured, more connected. Ajax responded immediately, moving to the indicated container and alerting with perfect form. "That's it," Ayanna called out. "That's exactly it." As the afternoon training session concluded, Ayanna made her way to the kennels to check on Rex. Since certification, their routine had shifted to deployment preparation. Additional medical screenings, specialized equipment fittings, advanced tactical scenarios specific to their upcoming assignment. She found him napping in his kennel, one ear perking up at her approach before he fully woke. His tail began wagging immediately, a full-body wiggle of joy that never failed to make her smile. "Hey, handsome," she greeted him, unlocking the kennel door. "Ready for some exercise?" They headed to the quieter eastern training yard, where Ayanna let Rex run off leash within the fenced perimeter, burning off energy after a day of confinement. As she watched him race around the yard, pure joy in his fluid movements, she reflected on how far they'd come. "Specialist Harris." Lieutenant Colonel Jackson approached from the direction of the headquarters building, his stride purposeful. "Sir." Ayanna straightened, calling Rex to her side. The dog responded immediately, assuming perfect heel position. "At ease," Jackson said. "I'm not here officially." He glanced around the empty training yard. "I wanted to speak with you privately before your deployment." "Yes, sir." Jackson studied her for a moment. "My first deployment with Maximus was to Baghdad in 2007. 3 weeks in, we were clearing houses in Sadr City when we took fire from an insurgent position. I froze, just for a second, but in combat, a second can be fatal." His expression grew distant with the memory. "Maximus didn't freeze. He moved exactly as he'd been trained, dragging me behind a concrete barrier just before the position we'd been standing in was hit." He focused on Ayanna again. "The bond between a handler and their dog transcends training. It's instinctive, intuitive. That dog," he nodded toward Rex, "would walk through fire for you. Not because of your technique, which is excellent, but because of the connection you've built." "Thank you, sir." "The thing about obstacles, Harris, is that they reveal character. Not just in those facing them, but in those creating them." Jackson's voice took on a harder edge. "What happened during your certification test was unacceptable. The Army is better than that." "Yes, sir. But you should know." His expression softened slightly. "The other handlers talk about it. About how you overcame every unexpected challenge. How you never lost focus, never complained. That kind of example, it matters." Ayanna thought of Rodriguez, of Diaz's invitation, of the subtle shifts she'd noticed in the unit's dynamics over the past 2 weeks. "Captain Rivera tells me you're considering the instructor position after your deployment rotation," Jackson continued. "I am, sir." "Good. The The program needs people like you." He glanced at his watch. "I've taken enough of your time. Carry on, specialist." After Jackson departed, Ayanna returned to the open area of the yard, unclipping Rex's leash to let him run again. As she watched him race across the grass, her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother. "How's my favorite K9 superstar?" This time, Ayanna didn't hesitate to reply. "Making Grandma Elise proud. We both are." That evening, after returning Rex to his kennel and completing her daily reports, Ayanna stood outside Connor's pub, momentarily hesitating before the entrance. Through the windows, she could see a group of handlers from her unit gathered around a large table, Diaz among them. Her hand moved to her pocket, fingers finding her grandmother's challenge coin, the small brass disc that had been carried through 3 generations of Harris women facing their own battles. She thought of her grandmother integrating the Army Nurse Corps, of her mother breaking barriers in military intelligence, of her own journey through the K9 program. The coin had never been about luck. It had been about remembering that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the determination to continue despite it. Ayanna pushed open the door and stepped inside. The conversation at the handler's table momentarily paused as heads turned toward her. Then Diaz stood, pulling out an empty chair. "Harris," he called with a genuine smile. "We saved you a seat." As she joined them, accepting a beer and the tentative inclusion it represented, Ayanna thought about the long road that had brought her here, not just to this table, but to this moment in her life. She thought about all the Black women who would come after her, who might find the path slightly easier because she had walked it first. "We were just talking about deployment," Specialist Chen explained, including her in the conversation. Wondering what to expect. "My mother says the first rule of deployment is to trust your training," Ayanna offered. "The second is to trust your team." Walsh, seated at the far end of the table, raised his glass slightly. "To the team, then," he said, meeting Ayanna's eyes with what might have been respect, or at least the beginning of it. "To the team," the handlers echoed. Later that night, as Ayanna walked back to her barracks under a sky filled with stars, she felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for months. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Deployment never was. And being a Black woman in a specialty field dominated by white men would always present challenges. But she had proven something essential, not just to Staff Sergeant Miller or Lieutenant Colonel Jackson or the other handlers, but to herself, that she belonged here, in this unit, with this dog, doing this work. That no amount of doubt or discrimination or deliberate sabotage could change that fundamental truth. Her grandmother's words came back to her, spoken decades ago, but still perfect in their wisdom. "Respect isn't given freely to people like us, Ayanna. It's earned through excellence, through determination, through refusing to be less than who you are." As the stars glittered overhead, Ayanna Harris walked with her head high, certain in the knowledge that she had earned every step of this journey, and that the path she was blazing would light the way for others to follow. Respect doesn't have a gender. It doesn't have a race. It has merit, and merit, once proven, cannot be denied. What moment in your life forced others to see you differently? When did you break through the limitations others placed on you?